Dick Van Dyke turned 99 last month, and for a while, everyone believed he was still doing incredibly well for his age. People saw him dancing with his wife, Arlene Silver, and working out several times a week, and it made them think he was almost unstoppable. But now, for the first time, Arlene, who is 53, has opened up about something she has kept private for years. She finally admitted that life behind closed doors has not been as simple or as perfect as people assumed. She said there is a certain curse that comes with living almost 100 years, a price that even someone as joyful and energetic as Dick Van Dyke can't escape. She explained that the truth of his daily struggles would shock many people who only see the cheerful public side of him. Her words showed that even though he appears strong, aging brings challenges that touch every part of a person's life. Dick's long story began on December 13, 1925, in West Plains, Missouri. He was born into a small, modest home where everything was simple and tight, and nothing ever came easy. His father worked as a traveling salesman for the Sunshine Cookie Company, which meant he was gone more often than he was home. His mother worked as a stenographer, typing letters and documents for long hours just to help keep the family afloat. Because money was always stretched thin, Dick learned early to entertain himself. He created jokes, made up stories, and used humor to fill the quiet moments. He didn't realize it then, but these little habits were shaping the person he would eventually become. Even though his childhood home was humble, it filled him with gratitude and taught him to appreciate the simplest joys in life, a quality that never left him. When Dick was 7, everything changed again when his family moved to Danville, Illinois. This small town, home to around 30,000 people, felt warm and welcoming. Neighbors waved from their porches, most people knew one another, and there was a sense of closeness in the air. Dick loved listening to relatives tell stories, copying the funny voices they used, and trying to make people laugh at the dinner table. It was in Danville that he first discovered how powerful laughter could be. In high school, Dick joined drama and music activities. The school was small, only a few hundred students, but it was the place where his world first started to expand. He took small roles, watched how the audience reacted, and learned how a simple joke or moment of humor could fill a room with joy. Those small experiences became the foundation of his dream to perform. Then, something unexpected happened. When he turned 18 and applied for a passport, he discovered that the birthday he had celebrated his entire life was wrong. His real date of birth was December 13, 1925. The realization shocked him. It made him feel like his life story had shifted in a strange and unexpected way. Even though it didn't change his life physically, it changed how he viewed his own past. He would talk about that moment for years, often saying it showed how small family secrets could shape a person without them even knowing. Dick's family tree stretched back far, all the way to Mayflower passenger John Alden, and his heritage included Dutch, English, Scottish, German, and Swiss German roots. His mother raised him with strong Christian values and hoped he might one day become a minister. But one high school drama class completely changed his direction. When he stepped on stage and heard laughter from the audience, something sparked inside him. Performing made him feel alive in a way nothing else ever had. Life at home was lively, especially after his younger brother, Jerry, was born in 1931. Jerry was constantly getting into trouble, hiding Dick's homework, pulling pranks, and filling their home with noise, frustration, and laughter. Their bond was strong, and later in life, Jerry would work with Dick on his television show. Even as kids, the two of them bounced energy off each other, building memories that would last a lifetime. School continued to influence Dick in surprising ways. His classmates included future entertainers like Donald O'Connor and Bobby Short, and even a cousin of Gene Hackman. Being surrounded by talented people showed him what entertainment could be. Every small school play felt like practice for something bigger, something he didn't yet fully understand but definitely felt pulled toward. In 1943, Dick graduated from Danville High School during the middle of World War II. Like many young men at the time, he wanted to join the military and fight for his country. At 17, he tried to enlist as a fighter pilot, but he was tall and extremely thin, weighing only about 135 pounds. Because of this, he was repeatedly rejected for being underweight. After several attempts, he was finally accepted but not as a pilot. Instead, He was trained to be a radio announcer. He took IQ tests, passed physical exams, and went through drills before being stationed in Toledo, Ohio. His eyesight was weak, and each flying test proved too difficult. So the military assigned him to announce for a show called Flight Time, which delivered news and entertainment to the troops. Without realizing it, Dyke was being pulled closer to the entertainment world that would define his life. At Camp Crowder in Missouri, he hosted shows for soldiers and partnered with Phil Erickson. The two created a silent comedy act called the Merry Mutes. Their act poked fun at officers, and one performance went so far that both men were nearly court-martialed for disrespect. They were given a strict warning but not punished. That moment taught Dyke that humor could be risky but also powerful. It showed him the edge his comedy naturally carried. When the war ended, Dyke returned home at 19, but coming back was harder than he expected. He had no job, no money, and no clear direction. He started selling vacuum cleaners door to door, facing rejection after rejection. People slammed doors in his face, and each day left him tired and embarrassed. But somewhere inside him, the belief in entertainment stayed alive. He knew performing was where he truly belonged, even if he didn't yet know how to get there. In 1947, his life changed when he met Margie Willett at a church dance. She was quiet, steady, and came from a conservative background. She wanted stability, a simple life, and clear expectations. Dyke, on the other hand, carried dreams of bright lights and fame. Their differences were real, and even in the early days, they both felt the tension. But they also cared deeply for each other, and they tried to build a future together. In 1948, a strange opportunity came his way. Dyke performed a skit on the CBS radio show Bride and Groom, and he won $2,000. The producers asked him and Margie if they wanted to get married live on the show. They agreed, and on the day of the broadcast, 15 million listeners heard them say their vows while standing between two microphones. The show gifted them rings, furniture, household items, and a 10-day honeymoon. But the moment the honeymoon ended, reality returned. They were broke again and forced to live in a relative's basement. Their marriage became a mix of hope and struggle, love and hardship. They faced everything together, even when everything felt uncertain. In those early years, Dyke and Margie lived in the house of Phil Erickson because they couldn't afford their own place. Dyke and Phil formed a comedy duo called Eric and Van. They performed small acts, told jokes on local radio, and dreamed of bigger stages. But success didn't come quickly. They often worked for little or no money, hoping that each performance would lead to something better. Dyke felt torn between supporting his family and chasing a dream that felt far away. But he never stopped believing that something brighter was waiting for him. As time went on, his talent finally began to open doors. He started getting small roles, hosting local shows, and earning just enough to keep his career alive. Even during his toughest days, he stayed committed to bringing joy to others. That dedication carried him through decades of work that eventually shaped him into one of the most beloved entertainers of all time. Now, as he approaches 100 years of life, the years have taken a toll on him, and Arlene has seen the private struggles that come with age. She said that even though Dyke still smiles and still tries to move with grace, he faces moments of confusion, weakness, and exhaustion that the public never sees. His mind sometimes slips, he needs more help around the house, and his once effortless energy now comes and goes in waves. Arlene said it breaks her heart to watch someone so full of life slowly lose pieces of himself to time. She admitted that loving someone who is nearly a century old comes with joy but also deep sadness. Still, she also said that Dyke remains grateful every day. He tries to laugh whenever he can, he appreciates every moment he gets with the people he loves, and he continues to fight the limitations that age brings. His spirit is still warm, still gentle, and still filled with the same kindness that shaped him as a boy in Missouri and Illinois. Arlene said that even with all the challenges, she feels honored to care for him and walk beside him through the final chapters of his remarkable life. She wants people to know that behind every smile, behind every public appearance, and behind every moment of strength lies a man who has lived a long, beautiful, complicated life and is now facing the one thing no one can escape: growing old. They practiced their slapstick routines every single day, and while Dyke pushed forward with all his enthusiasm, Margie felt more and more lonely with each passing week. Dick's dream demanded long hours, travel, and constant effort, but Margie carried all the worry in silence. By 1946, Dick had already started hustling at WDN in Danville, earning just $35 a week. He filled the station with jokes, small stories, and late-night shifts that left him exhausted but hopeful. He kept the job for a year before taking a big risk and leaving for California in 1947 because he believed the West offered real opportunities that Danville could never give him. In Pasadena, he managed to join KPS Radio, where he co-hosted a show called Merry-Go-Round with his partner, Phil Erickson. They worked hard, 5 days a week, earning $50 weekly, just enough to survive if they lived carefully. Dick stayed in a tiny tent trailer because he couldn't afford anything else. He lived off peanut butter sandwiches and cheap coffee, trying to keep himself going. Their show slowly gained listeners, but the pressure behind the scenes began affecting him. He started drinking occasionally, telling himself it was harmless, something to ease the stress. But it would not stay harmless forever. Their comedy act, Eric and Van, performed in nightclub after nightclub, trying to build a name. They performed in smoky rooms filled with loud conversations and hecklers. Laughter came, but it was often awkward, unsure, or polite. They wanted the crowds to roar, but most nights ended with tired claps and little money. Then, in 1953, a rare moment of luck arrived. They won a CBS talent contest and were given a radio job at Waga in Atlanta. Within just a few months, they had 20,000 listeners and were earning $300 a week, more than they had ever made before. But success brought tension. Arguments and disagreements grew until they eventually split, and Dick found himself standing alone again, wondering how long he could keep chasing a dream one step at a time. In 1955, life hit him all at once. After one performance, he was arrested for drunk driving even though he had not been drinking that night. Nervous exhaustion made him unsteady, and officers assumed the worst. The arrest damaged his reputation immediately. Sponsors pulled away, radio jobs stopped calling, and his career seemed to collapse overnight. He was 30 years old, $10,000 in debt, and seriously considering walking away from entertainment forever. But even during his darkest moments, something inside him refused to give up. So he kept going. In 1957, he appeared on The Johnny Carson Show, hoping the national exposure would help him restart his career. Instead, the opposite happened. He bombed. He forgot half his jokes, stumbled through the rest, and walked off stage feeling humiliated. But hidden in that awful moment was a strange blessing. Carl Reiner, who happened to be watching, saw something in him, something honest, awkward, gentle, and funny. Reiner invited him to audition for a Broadway part, and Dick, desperate for any chance, agreed. In 1958, he landed a tiny role in a production called The Footman. It paid only $25 a week, barely enough for food, but that little job helped him find his footing in New York. It put him in the middle of auditions, rehearsals, and talented performers. Slowly, it opened doors he never expected would open for him. Meanwhile, his family was growing. His son Christian had been born in 1948, then Barry in 1949. Stacy arrived in 1955, and Carrie Beth joined the family in 1961. As the kids came one after another, Margie carried more responsibility while Dick moved from job to job trying to stabilize their life. She worked as a waitress whenever money got tight, and money was tight more often than not. The pressure weighed heavily on Dick. Every setback pushed him toward drinking again, and each private binge left their marriage with new scars. They moved homes again and again, always chasing a little more stability, always hoping the next job would be the breakthrough. But the breakthrough took years to come. In 1959, Dick stepped onto Broadway again in a small production that closed after only 2 weeks. It could have been another disappointment, but something about him lingered in the minds of the producers who saw him perform. He played several parts: a counselor, a jock, a groom, switching from one character to the next with a loose, natural charm he never learned in any class. His 6'1" frame moved easily across the stage, shaped by the tap dancing tricks he had picked up back in the army. Producers noticed immediately that he wasn't trained for Broadway but had something more important, a spark that made people watch him. That spark carried him into the musical Bye Bye Birdie in 1960. When he was cast as Albert Peterson, he felt terrified. He had almost no professional musical theater experience, and rehearsals were long, demanding, and overwhelming. But he pushed through, determined not to lose this chance. Then April 14, 1960 arrived. The lights at the Martin Beck Theatre rose, the audience filled the seats, and Dick stepped into the world he had waited for his whole life. The audience fell in love with him almost immediately. Critics wrote that his honest, pure, everyman style made the character feel real and warm. The show quickly became a hit, running for an incredible 607 performances and earning over $2 million. And yet, despite carrying so much of the show's heart, Dick earned only about $500 a week. Still, he never complained. Quietly and without any publicity, he donated a portion of his earnings to charity because he believed that kindness mattered more than fame. His rise continued, and in 1961 he won the Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. The show won 4 Tony Awards in total, and suddenly the entertainment world began paying attention to him. People on Broadway talked about how unusual it was that this tall, gentle man with almost no formal musical training had captured the stage so naturally. Some even whispered that it was unfair how little he was paid compared to the massive profits the show brought in, but Dick wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about the first time in his life he truly felt like he belonged. Behind the curtain, life was far from glamorous. Gower Champion, the director and choreographer of the show, demanded absolute perfection. During the early preview performances, Dick struggled with one dance number that just never seemed to land right. Every time he missed a step, Champion's sharp criticism cut into him. He felt embarrassed and frustrated, and there were nights when he seriously thought about walking away from the production altogether. But Carl Reiner stepped in at the right moment. He encouraged him, reminded him of his talent, and talked him out of quitting. That support changed him. It helped shape the calm, gentle, patient man he eventually became, someone able to survive pressure without losing himself. It also changed how the entertainment world saw him. He could take criticism, learn from it, and still stay warm and likable. Hollywood was waiting. When Bye Bye Birdie was turned into a film in 1963, Dick returned as Albert, the role he made famous on Broadway. What he did not expect was the fight that came before signing the contract. His salary was cut from $25,000 to $10,000. It was a painful reminder that studios did not value Broadway actors the same way they valued established film stars, and they used that imbalance to negotiate aggressively. The movie performed well, and Anne-Margaret's standout performance made it even more popular, but the experience left Dick with new awareness. He saw clearly how cold and unforgiving the movie business could be behind the smiles and the bright lights. Even with these challenges, his success continued to grow. He earned 3 Emmy nominations from his variety specials. But this same period shook him deeply in his personal life. During the run of Bye Bye Birdie, he discovered something that broke his heart. His wife Margie had become dependent on prescription pills. The news stunned him. He didn't know how to respond or how to help her. After performances, instead of celebrating, he started sitting at bars, drinking more than he ever intended to. Tabs grew bigger and were left unpaid for too long. What began as small escapes slowly turned into a habit he would struggle with for many years. Then something almost unbelievable happened in 1961. The Dick Van Dyke Show, created by Carl Reiner, was rejected twice by CBS because they thought it felt too New York for a national audience. But Reiner wouldn't let it die. He believed in the show and believed in Dick even more. That now famous fall over the ottoman in the pilot episode made the network laugh and finally changed their minds. With that moment, the show was approved. Suddenly, something magical was beginning. Over 5 seasons, from 1961 to 1966, the series delivered 158 episodes. At its peak, up to 30 million people tuned in to watch the show. By its second season, it had climbed into the Nielsen Top 10. Reports said Dick improvised nearly 40% of his lines, bringing his natural charm into every scene. His cheerful "Holy Smokes" became one of the lines fans loved most. The chemistry among the cast was powerful, and the show quickly turned into a classic that people still celebrate today. But fame, like always, came with complications. Behind the scenes, tensions, jealousies, and pay disputes grew. Larry Hagman had once auditioned for Dick's role and never forgot losing it. Mary Tyler Moore, who played Laura, was underpaid in the earlier seasons, which led to several heated salary disputes. Dick tried to calm arguments whenever they happened, but the tension never fully disappeared. As his work life kept rising, his private world slowly fell apart. By the early 1970s, after the show ended, Dick was drinking heavily every night, 3 or 4 martinis before bed, sometimes more. It grew so serious that he was hospitalized for 3 weeks. Around the same time, Margie checked into rehab for her own struggles with pills. Their children felt the weight of everything happening in the household. Dick tried hard to fix things silently, but the pressure was too much for one person to carry alone. By 1966, he simply could not continue with the show. He felt drained and worn down. Even though CBS wanted more seasons, he asked to end it. The entire cast agreed that it was better to stop while the show was still strong. Life magazine covered the ending, honoring how much the show meant to America. Afterward, Dick received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and a syndication deal worth $1 million. But even with all the success, there was a sadness beneath it. Margie had spent years raising their children alone on their ranch in Phoenix while he was away working, and his long absences left wounds that time could not easily heal. Christian and Barry, his sons, appeared on the show sometimes, but their father was home far less than he wished he had been. The work that turned him into a legend also took him away from the people he loved the most. Then came Mary Poppins in 1964. Dick wanted the role more than anything, and he personally convinced Walt Disney to cast him as both Bert and Mr. Dawes Sr., the old banker. He trained intensively with a dialect coach, trying to master a Cockney accent. But when the film was released, audiences in London laughed at it. Critics said it was one of the worst accents ever done on film. Despite that, the movie became a massive hit, earning $12 million at the box office, more than $900 million in today's money. Dick won a Grammy for the children's soundtrack. But behind the joyful dance sequences and cheerful songs, he was struggling quietly. Julie Andrews, who played Mary Poppins, pushed him hard during rehearsals, wanting every moment to be perfect. The pressure made him nervous, and he often stepped outside to smoke, hiding a growing addiction that he didn't want people to see. Later in the same year, he starred in the film What a Way to Go. Despite having a cast full of major stars, the movie lost $4 million. Critics were harsh, and the disappointment cut deeply into him. Dick later said he regretted taking the role because it made him doubt whether he truly belonged in the film industry at all. After that failure, he stepped back toward television, hoping to rebuild his confidence and find work that felt right again. In 1968, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang arrived. The film became a worldwide hit, and children everywhere adored his role as Carrot-Taker's Potts. The songs, the flying car, and the magical energy of the movie left a lasting impact on audiences. But once the cameras stopped rolling each day, Dick struggled with depression. He felt lost and overwhelmed by his private battles. People on set sometimes made jokes about the size of his nose, thinking they were being playful, but every comment hurt him more than they knew. Each joke cut a little deeper, especially during a time when he already felt fragile and unsure of himself. He continued performing risky stunts even when he was exhausted because working was the only thing that made him feel steady and useful. Years later, he talked openly about how hard that time truly was for him. He described deep loneliness, long nights of drinking, and a constant feeling that he was losing control of himself. During the height of his career, he was even offered the chance to play James Bond not once but twice, first in 1967 and then again in 1971. He turned the role down both times, joking that his terrible British accent made him the worst possible person for the job. Even though he laughed about it later, saying no to such a huge opportunity showed how unsure he felt about himself during those years. Around the same time, he starred in the movie Divorce American Style, which felt uncomfortable because it reminded him too much of his own marriage problems. Rumors had started swirling about him and Angie Dickinson after they worked together in 1965. He had 4 children at home, and those rumors added even more pressure to a marriage already strained by addiction, distance, and the emotional weight of fame. Even though he tried to keep his private struggles hidden, the cracks were showing. He stepped into the 1970s with what looked like a bright comeback. The new Dick Van Dyke Show launched in 1971, and he earned $50,000 for every episode. It was one of the biggest television contracts of that era, and everyone expected the show to become a major hit. At first, it seemed like it might. The idea felt fresh, and his name alone pulled in an audience. But slowly, the show lost its spark. The writing felt weak, storylines changed too often, and new cast members came and went so quickly that the chemistry never settled. Even his co-star Hope Langer admitted that most of her scenes were just simple lines like "How was your day?" which showed how shallow the material had become. Ratings dropped every season, and by the time the show ended in 1974 after 72 episodes, he was exhausted, drinking heavily again, and drowning in quiet money worries. He later said that this was one of the darkest periods of his life because the world saw a smiling TV star while he felt like he was falling apart inside. In 1980, Hope returned when he stepped onto Broadway to play Harold Hill in The Music Man. He was 54 but filled with energy and passion on stage. His performance earned him a Drama Desk Award nomination, and audiences loved seeing him live. Behind the scenes, though, he was in pain. Intense dance rehearsals damaged his back, and the pain grew so strong that he began taking prescription painkillers just to get through rehearsals and performances. It reminded him of his wife Marge's long battle with prescription pills, and that connection made the situation even heavier for him. Still, he pushed himself to keep going because he believed he owed the audience his best. His fans never saw the suffering behind his wide smile. During this period, he made frequent appearances on The Carol Burnett Show, and viewers always laughed at his joyful, playful energy. But privately, he was slipping back toward drinking. He had tried to get sober in 1972 and even attended Alcoholics Anonymous quietly, without telling the public. But the pressure of being constantly in the spotlight, along with the demands of work, kept pulling him back. The contrast was sharp. He recorded anti-smoking public service announcements while secretly fighting his own addictions and relapses. He later said that living with that contradiction made him feel ashamed and trapped. His family life moved in different directions at the same time. His son Barry, who had first appeared as a child extra in Mary Poppins in 1964, eventually became one of his closest collaborators. They reunited years later on Diagnosis Murder, playing father and son on television as well as in real life. Some of his grandchildren followed the family's path into acting and creative work. His grandson Shane was born in 1979, and others like Wes, Carrie, and Taran joined the world of writing, performing, and production. Even as he celebrated their success, he admitted that years of drinking, work, and long absences created emotional gaps that were difficult to heal. He felt guilty for not being as present as he wished he had been. In 1974, he appeared on The Dick Cavett Show and surprised the audience by speaking honestly about his alcoholism. He called it a physical disease and talked openly about denial, relapse, and how alcohol slowly turned against him in his later 40 seconds. He said there came a day when alcohol tasted wrong, made him sick, and that moment helped push him toward sobriety. His honesty broke barriers because few celebrities at that time talked openly about addiction. Viewers said his story helped them understand their own struggles or encouraged them to seek help. As the years continued, he found himself taking on surprising roles. He voiced characters on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and played Captain Goofbeard in 2014, which earned him attention from younger audiences and even award recognition. But the late 1980s brought more challenges. The 1988 version of The Van Dyke Show lasted only 10 episodes, reminding him how unpredictable and fragile a long career could be, especially for older performers trying to stay relevant. In 1995, he had a terrifying moment while filming Diagnosis Murder. He was supposed to act out a scene where his character choked on a foam gag, but the prop slipped too deep into his throat and caused real choking. The set froze in panic, and the crew rushed to pull it out. For a few seconds, he felt genuine fear that his life was slipping away. The episode eventually aired, but the memory of that near tragedy stayed with him as a reminder of how quickly life can change. He still returned to work soon after because he felt a strong need to finish the series while he was healthy enough to do so. Later, he found renewed success acting in the Murder 101 series that began in 2006. The Hallmark movies were popular and brought in millions in syndication. He played Professor Jonathan Maxwell, a curious, slightly eccentric character, and even in his 80s he insisted on doing many of his own stunts. He performed chase scenes, quick movements, and comedic falls, wanting the audience to feel the authenticity he always tried to bring to his work. Viewers loved seeing him and Barry together again, and the movies played throughout the United Kingdom and Canada for years. His personal life continued to carry complicated emotions. In 1977, he performed in the Broadway play Same Time, Next Year, a story about a long-running affair. The role mirrored painful parts of his real life. His 32-year marriage to Margie Willett had started to unravel when he began a relationship with Michelle Triola in 1976. Michelle had worked as his agent's secretary, and their quiet friendship slowly turned into something deeper. In 1980, he finally confessed the truth to Margie. He later said that moment felt heavy and heartbreaking, full of guilt he carried for decades. They separated quietly and finalized their divorce in 1984. The emotional wound never fully closed. Michelle had her own difficult story. In 1979, she became widely known for suing actor Lee Marvin, claiming he had promised to share half of his earnings with her after a 6-year relationship. She won a settlement of $100,000, but it was overturned soon after. When he learned she was struggling financially, he secretly gave her the same amount. When Margie found out, she was devastated, and their marriage had no chance of healing after that. She died in 2008 from pancreatic cancer, and they never reconciled. His darkest personal battle came in 1972 when he was hospitalized for 3 weeks because of his drinking. He described the ward where he stayed, the withdrawal he witnessed around him, and the fear that kept him awake at night. Through the 1980s, he wrestled with depression and even suicidal thoughts. He believed that some of his struggles came from genetics or personality, but the turning point came when he realized alcohol no longer numbed his pain. He quit drinking in his 40s and stayed sober with the help of Alcoholics Anonymous and people who supported him through his hardest moments. His family continued to grow while he tried to rebuild himself. Christian was born in 1948, Barry in 1949, Stacy in 1955, and Carrie Beth in 1961. Barry followed him into acting. Christian became a district attorney in Oregon. Carrie Beth married Kevin McNall and made occasional television appearances with her father. He often said he tried to make up for his earlier mistakes by being present for his grandchildren. He had 8 or more grandchildren, and many of them joined the creative world as writers, actors, and musicians. Michelle Triola remained his partner until she died in 2009. After her passing, he eventually developed a bond with Arlene Silver, whom he met in 2006. Their relationship grew slowly and naturally, and in 2012, they married on Leap Day. The 46-year age difference drew criticism from outsiders, and some accused Arlene of being a trophy wife. He defended her with a gentle smile, saying she made him feel young again. Still, the comments and memories from his first marriage sometimes left him emotionally bruised, even though he tried to keep his heart open. A surprising and joyful moment came in June 2024 when he became the oldest person ever to win a Daytime Emmy at age 98. He won for his role on Days of Our Lives, where he appeared in 4 episodes as Timothy Robichaud. When his name was announced, the applause shook the whole room. He beat actors far younger than him and joked that he felt like a spy from nighttime television sneaking into the daytime category. He laughed that if he had known he would live this long, he would have taken much better care of himself. Growing older brought new difficulties. Arlene Silver, who was 53, spoke about the strange curse that comes with living to nearly 100 years old. He had outlived almost every close friend he ever had. People like Ed Asner and Norman Lear were gone. He often felt tired and less able to travel, and lonely moments settled in more easily than before. Yet he kept moving forward, believing that staying active was the key to staying alive. He worked out 3 times a week, danced with Arlene in their living room, and continued writing essays and looking for new acting opportunities. Even with his remarkable energy, life reminded him how quickly things could change. On his 99th birthday in December 2024, His family gathered at his Malibu home, a place he called Vandy Manor. Barry, Carrie Beth, Wes, and Kyla came to celebrate with him. But the celebration almost ended in tragedy. The Franklin fire forced more than 20,000 people to evacuate on December 9th. The fire burned almost 4,000 acres and destroyed at least 7 homes. His pets had to be rushed out, and neighbors helped him escape as the flames came dangerously close. Later, he thanked the community for protecting him and showing kindness during one of the scariest moments of his life. Despite everything he has faced: addiction, heartbreak, career challenges, health scares, and the loss of loved ones, he still tries to greet each day with hope. He believes that laughter, movement, and love are the things that keep a person alive, no matter their age. Even in his late 90s, he continues to find joy in singing with Arlene, spending time with his family, and sharing pieces of his long life with anyone who might be encouraged by his journey.